I just watched Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, and I gotta be honest, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills here. Let's get into it. What's up, my dude? Your friendly neighborhood Tony here, and as I do with all my movie reviews, I'm gonna give you a little bit of information about Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. You know, who worked on it, what it's about, all that good stuff. Then I'll go into the things I did and did not like about the movie, the pros and cons. And finally, I'll let you know who I think Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is for, if anyone. If that kind of thing sounds cool to you and you want to keep up to speed on all the new big movies that are coming out in theaters and on streaming, make sure you subscribe. All right, let's go ahead and start with a little bit of information about the movie and about the franchise as a whole. So the original Aquaman came out in 2018, and it is the highest grossing DCEU movie, period, by a lot. It went on to make over $1 billion at the box office worldwide and is the only DCEU movie to do that. And the reason I bring that up is because that raises so many questions with this movie. One, why are they not promoting this movie? I mean, yeah, we've seen a couple ads here and there, but it is nowhere near as much as they've promoted some other DC movies. And two, why is it that critic screenings just took place the day before the movie comes out in theaters, and we're supposed to hold our reviews until it's basically already in theaters? These are not good signs. And to kind of answer the questions I just asked, generally a studio would not be promoting a movie if they didn't believe in it, if they thought the movie wasn't going to make much money, so they don't want to invest too much in the promotion and in the marketing for the movie. But again, the first Aquaman made over $1 billion, so why do they think this one's not going to make money? And two, generally they'll hold off on the reviews being put out because they think the movie's bad and they don't want the critics to tell the audience. So they're hoping that people will just buy tickets before actually looking up any reviews, which again is kind of a position of weakness and something I just don't get, particularly when you've been as successful as you have been with this franchise. It really just feels like DC and Warner Brothers don't believe in the movie, but we'll get into whether or not they should be believing in it later on in the review. Now, as far as a plot summary is concerned, right off of IMDb, it says Aquaman balances his duties as king and a member of the Justice League, all while planning a wedding. Interesting. Black Manta is on the hunt for Atlantean tech to help him rebuild his armor. Okay. And Orm plots to escape his Atlantean prison. Wait, what? Okay. This plot summary that's provided by the studios, I assume, and is on IMDb is barely what the movie's about. And of course, I don't want to spoil anything or let you know any major plot points, but 2/3 of what they say in this plot summary is not what happens in the movie. So it definitely feels like there may have been some major rewrites. Now, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom was originally supposed to come out a year ago, almost to the date, but it got pushed a year out. They said largely because of the pandemic and the delays in production. Although the day that it was supposed to come out last year ended up being the day that James Cameron's Avatar sequel came out, so I'm not surprised that they pushed from that. The movie also has about a $200 million budget, which is very expensive, but seems to be the norm nowadays with comic book movies. And I'm sure they ended up spending way more money having to delay it for a year. It's definitely a little concerning. If I was DC or if I was Warner Brothers, I would be worried that I'm not going to make my money back on this one. Also, if you didn't already know, this is the final film in the DCEU. So all of the movies, including Justice League and Wonder Woman and The Flash and Man of Steel, it's all wrapping up in this one movie, or at least this is the last one in that storyline. The movie stars Jason Momoa, of course, as Aquaman, Patrick Wilson as Orm, Aquaman's younger brother, which, okay, are we really to believe that Patrick Wilson is younger than Jason Momoa? You have Yahya Abdul-Mateen returning as Manta, the main villain in this movie. Randall Park has a role. There's also Dolph Lundgren, Tamora Morrison, Nicole Kidman, Amber Heard, and Martin Short also makes an appearance. So a pretty good cast, mostly people returning from the prior movie, but a couple new characters mixed in as well. All right, so now we have the whole setup. Let me go ahead and get into the pros, the things that I liked about this movie. And first, I want to start by saying I think that whether or not you like Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is going to come down to your expectations. And we'll get into that a little bit more. So for me, I saw this movie in 3D in theaters, and I gotta say, I thought the 3D looked pretty good. I'm generally not a fan of 3D, especially when it's kind of overdone, you know, when you have things that are like reaching out of the screen at you. But this really felt like they just had more depth to the shot. So the main characters or whatever they were focusing on was just presented kind of on screen as you would normally see. And then there was just more depth to the background. And I thought it looked pretty good. Also, throughout the movie, they explore different locations, very colorful and, you know, interesting scenes. You see Atlantis, of course, and they do spend some time on the surface, and each time it's at an interesting location. All in all, I thought visually the movie looked really good. You know, people can be picky about CG, and I definitely have been before, but from what I saw, I thought it looked pretty good. Again, it was in 3D, so maybe I couldn't examine the quality of the CG as much as I would if it was just a 2D showing. But yeah, from what I could see, it looked good. Now, as far as the plot of the movie, it kind of becomes this buddy cop adventure, this odd couple dynamic going on between Jason Momoa and Patrick Wilson, which you've kind of seen little bits of in the trailers. And I honestly feel that Patrick Wilson and Jason Momoa work really well together. Patrick Wilson, of course, being Orm, he plays kind of the straight man, very serious. And Jason Momoa is kind of that fun-loving, silly big brother to Patrick Wilson. And throughout the movie, you kind of get that vibe from the two of them. You know, Momoa kind of picks on him a little bit here and there, and it's cute and funny. And despite the weird age difference where Patrick Wilson is several years older than Jason Momoa, you do buy them as brothers. Maybe not visually, but as far as their personalities and the way that they deal with each other. They do a really clever thing where Orm, Patrick Wilson's character, has never really spent any time on the surface. So there ends up being kind of this fish out of water thing going on with him. And the way they play that is definitely for comedy. So I thought that was clever and cute as well. Aside from that, throughout the movie, you get some really cool fight scenes. There's some great hand-to-hand combat, particularly one towards the end of the movie with kind of like the big climax with the good guys fighting the bad guys. There's a really cool hand-to-hand scene with Aquaman and Black Manta. And the way that they shot that, the way they choreographed it, I thought looked really cool. Overall, though, the story is pretty simple, and it feels like that's what they were trying to do from the start. There's nothing spectacular or unique or super serious or contemplative or anything like that about Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. It is a simple, straightforward adventure story with some funny lines and some cool action sequences and some mostly likable characters. I really think for the holiday break, kids are gonna love this movie. And if I'm being honest, I know it's blasphemous to say, but I kind of enjoyed it more than the original. Yeah, I know, crazy. Now, don't get me wrong, there are definitely some things I didn't like about this movie, so let's go ahead and get into that with the cons. But before we do, I want to let you know that this video is sponsored by you. That's right, I'm just a small little channel here without any big corporate sponsors or anything like that, so just by watching the videos, you're really helping me out. If you want to be super dope though, I am currently making the climb to 2,000 subscribers, and I might be hitting it in the next couple days. So if you want to help me cross that milestone, definitely consider subscribing. And if you've already subscribed, go ahead and jump down in the comments and let me know what you think about Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Or what's your favorite DCEU movie? Whatever you do, I appreciate it. All right. Back to the cons. All right, so as I mentioned before, it's kind of a simple story, and really one of the things that jumped out to me while I was watching it is that the plot kind of moves like a video game, which I know is probably a strange thing to say, but it really does feel like you're going from one stage to the next stage to the next stage until you get to the final boss battle at the end. And so that can be maybe a little clunky when it comes to how it's written. Although, again, I didn't mind it so much. The dialogue's also pretty cheesy, I'm not gonna lie. But again, I really feel like that's what they were aiming for. So I guess if you are aiming at it being cheesy and silly and you hit that, is that a success or a failure? I don't know. I think that's going to be up to you. There's also a ton of exposition in this movie. It opens up with Jason Momoa just kind of reciting to the audience what's been happening recently in his life, which is fine. We see that a lot in movies. But then there are several moments throughout the movie where various characters are just either talking to themselves or speaking to the people around them. And I guess they tried to cover it up in a clever enough way. For example, there's one where a character is doing kind of an audio diary for himself, but it's really just a way for the creators of the movie to give us more information. And then there's another scene later on where Aquaman, I think it's Aquaman, is talking to his group of other heroes that are around him, and they're just talking about exactly what's going on and what they're going to be doing next. And it's just a way to give you exposition. But at the very least, they try to cover it up. There's another couple things that kind of stood out to me that I do want to touch on. One is the acting. Some of the acting was pretty decent. I thought Patrick Wilson was really good in his role. Jason Momoa is Jason Momoa playing himself. So there's nothing really there to dig into. Honestly, the big standout to me as far as poor quality acting was with Amber Heard. You can really tell they cut down a lot of her scenes, but even in like the small moments that she was on screen, whenever she had dialogue to say, it was so wooden. I was talking to my girlfriend about it on the drive home from the theater, and we were trying to recite some of her lines, but we couldn't even say them as poorly as she said them, and neither of us are actors. So I have no idea how she got this role or kept this role, but thankfully they cut down on her scenes a lot, or at least that's how it felt. Another little nitpick is Aquaman's costume in the movie. They've definitely changed it from the first movie, and it looks so awkward. It reminds me of one of those little kid costumes, like the Incredible Hulk costumes that are inflatable and you get all puffed up when you put it on. That's basically what his costume was. Very strange. I don't know why they did that. And really the last little nitpick is throughout the movie, there is a ridiculous amount of product placement for Guinness, the beer. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Guinness. It's delicious. But just constantly throughout the movie, there are scenes of just Guinness cans sitting on a table. They're drinking from a glass that has Guinness on it. There are points where Aquaman says, oh, I can't wait to like grab a Guinness. Like it's ridiculous how much product placement is in this movie. So, all right, that's the good and the bad and even my little nitpicks here. Who do I think Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is going to be for? Well, first off, the big easy answer is kids, right? This movie is pretty unapologetically aimed at a younger audience. It's big and bright and colorful and action-packed with silly jokes. And I think young kids are going to absolutely eat that up. Now, I think part of the big issue is that this is the final film in the DCEU, and it doesn't really feel like a big send-off. And that can be both a good and a bad thing, right? You know, we complain about all of these movies having to be tied into one another and to expand into a greater universe. And this is just a simple adventure flick with some comedy and action mixed in. So if you're looking for that big interconnected universe, then this is not going to work for you. But if you just want a simple good time in the theater, I think Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom won't let you down. Just make sure you know what you're getting into first. Either way, if Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom sounds cool to you, I definitely recommend checking it out in theaters this week. If you've seen it already, let me know what you think in the comments below. And if not, what's your favorite DCEU movie? For me, I have to say Man of Steel. I don't think it got a fair shake when it originally came out, but every time I watch it, it just gets better and better. And of course, if you want to keep up to speed on all the new big movies that are coming out in theaters and on streaming, make sure you subscribe. All right, my dude, I'll catch you in the next one. Be good.